is the son of Jane and John Brown, my great-grandparents from Manchester. He didn't get the chance to have much to say about him, but he was a keen carpenter. I still have the table he made at home. And he had a lady friend that he left behind. He waited for him for 2 to 3 years until she came to see his mother, who gave her an onyx ring and said, "Go and live your life, he's not coming back." And that's all I really know about him.
Thank you. It's Ordinary Signalman William Raymond Gray, HMS Glorious, and I've wrote Chatham at the side of there because his name is not on this memorial, it's on the Chatham.
I'd like to say a poem that was written by Raymond's brother, Ronald, who was skipper of HMS Cordella in June 1944. This is what he penned. He was so young to give too much, a boy as brave as any man. 18 years upon this earth was his allotted span. Yet he had lived out to the end, the full length of his mortal days. Could he have left a finer name, or sung a nation's higher praise? Before his son had reached high noon, before his best in life was known, before a line had marked his brow, he went into the dark, not alone, but with a good ship's crew. They all gave all, withholding naught, gladly and intrudingly giving all they had to give, that others may live safe and free. He maybe was too young to die, while some of us, with liberty at stake, can play, while others offer all, for human freedom's sake. We're a little bit ungrateful. If we never pause to pray, if we never find some little word of gratitude to say, the phrasing doesn't matter, nor the length. If only we can say he's not forgotten, a signalman, a Gray.
Thank you, Andy. Steve.
Is it me next? Able Seaman John Brain, Royal Fleet Reserve, HMS Ardent.
Ordinary Telegrapher Norman Walsh, HMS Glorious. Norman was the uncle I didn't know. He was the oldest of 6 children, mother's pride and joy. Talented footballer at 11 years old, went to school, won the local area championships. Passed his 11 plus, of course in those days it was virtually a private education. It cost a lot of money to go to grammar school, they couldn't afford to send him. He left school at 14, as was the way in those days. He became an apprentice tailor, working in Manchester. But after 2 years he was made redundant. So he did 2 years training as a tailor, and from there he joined the Royal Navy as a boy sailor and went to HMS Gandhi as a trainee telegraphist. Norman used to earn, and I've got his letters actually in the folder that I brought with me. He used to write quite a lot to his mother, my gran, and she kept all his letters. And what he used to do, in one of them he says, he earned a lot of spare money by altering uniforms for the officers and for the boys wear the uniforms that they're issued with, they don't fit them. So he makes them fit them. And we give him only 6pence each in those days, which quite a few coming along, you know. So, and my uncle, his brother, Kevin, who used to be in the association before he passed away, he believed, and I doubt this is very tenuous, he believed that it was his brother that sent the disputed signal picked up by Devonshire. So we never know that, you know what I mean? And he thinks that because in one of his letters, Norman, as a trainee telegraphist, said, I've been allocated my trainee call sign as WS. And if you look at the documentary, the senior telegraphist on the Devonshire said he knew that the signal came from Glorious because she used a peacetime call sign, which was WS. That's a bit tenuous, you know, but Kevin believed it. But I always knew about Norman because my gran had his picture up in the wall in the front room with like a collage of the Glorious that was made out of, I think it was, do you remember you used to get silver paper on Quality Street and roses and that? It was made of that, the ship, the Glorious. I don't ever know what happened to that, we'll have to shoot him. So he was missed, and only 2 weeks after his 18th birthday is when he died. And we've got a letter from him in that folder dated the 23rd of May 1940. So that may be one of the last letters to come from Glorious that we know of. So that was my uncle who died on Glorious. Gary?
Right, able seaman personality in HMS Ardent. My grandfather joined the Navy in 1912 as a boy sailor, did 12 years, First World War. Left the Navy, joined the post office, was a postman until 1939 when he was called up again at the age of 44 and died aged 45, left a wife and 8 kids.
Okay, Gary. Chief Electrical Artificer Edward Brown Williamson, HMS Glorious. You want to speak for him? Stoker First Class John Thomas American.
That's me.
HMS Acasta.
Yes. So, my grandfather, John Thomas American, was born in a rural area of Lincolnshire called Amber Hill in 1903. His parents were called John American and Mary Ann Cinderson, John's second wife. The American family were a farming family from Lincolnshire. Anyway, John, my grandfather, he married Annie Weston from Leicester, and they had 4 children, which were Alan, who died at the age of 20, Norman, and Bernard was my father, who died when he was 43, and they were devastated to hear their father had been killed, which left Annie a widow with 3 children to bring up alone. He joined the Navy and served HMS Victory on HMS Dryad from 1923 to 26 in Portsmouth, and when they moved to Leicester, he joined Leicestershire Police, and he served there until 1939. And when he was called to serve the Royal Navy Reserves at the beginning of World War II, he served as Stoker First Class on HMS Devonshire, and later he became Stoker First Class on HMS Acasta until the 8th of June 1940, when HMS Acasta was sunk, and his service number was 125710. Thank you.
Thank you, all right. Gunner Harold George Moses, HMS Ardent. Petty Officer Harry David Joseph Barr, HMS Acasta. Engine Room Artificer Walter William Muir, HMS Glorious. Able Seaman Patrick Pierce Murphy, HMS Glorious. Stoker First Class Arthur Patrick Kelly, HMS Glorious. Commander Arthur Edward Francis Lovell, HMS Glorious. Lieutenant Commander Donald Edward Smeaton, HMS Glorious. Ordinary Telegraphist Dominic John Logue, HMS Glorious.
Dominic is my dad's oldest brother, born in 1922, 7th of May 1922, and of course he passed on the 8th of August, and 1 month and a day after his 18th birthday. Now I know just about that much about him, but having come here for 21 years, I've learned this, which I got in Edinburgh. It's the memorial in Edinburgh, so it's a certificate I managed to receive from him. Lauren's uncle?
Great uncle.
Great uncle. My uncle Dominic, who you see here now, left, not right, sorry, I'm trying to think where he is. So this is my uncle Dominic, and just on April 1940, along with Peggy Thompson, whom he was betrothed to. Now I was telling someone a story last night that I met her great niece about 20 years ago, and she told me the story of a glove that she had. It was a long armed glove. He bought a pair, and that was his engagement gift to her. But he says, I'll give you this one, and I'll give you the other one when you come back, they will get married. You all know the story thereafter. Yeah. That's my life. That's his life, sorry.
Thank you, John. Ordinary Seaman Albert Craft, HMS Ardent. Able Seaman Victor George Haynes, HMS Glorious.
And then Stoker First Class John Ernest Gallion, HMS Glorious, and I've said about Yvonne because she's not here today, but I want to share what she wrote in my book. Stoker First Class, HMS Glorious, John Ernest Galleon Ranker, Stoker First Class, service number DX87917. Call Royal Navy, ship HMS Glorious, age 23. John was my great uncle, one of my grandfather's younger brothers. I had grown up seeing his photograph hanging up in my grandparents' home, and even as a young age was aware that he was Uncle Johnny, who died in the war. As I grew older, I would often hear my family talking about HMS Glorious, but the enormity of it all became apparent to me after watching the 1997 television documentary, The Tragedy of HMS Aircraft Carrier Glorious. I recall the heartbreak of my family members after they had watched, in particularly my grandfather. Several years later, this has inspired me to do some research of my own, and I eventually found the GLARAC Association online and began regularly attending events down in Plymouth. The GLARAC website featured photographs of the crew members of HMS Glorious, HMS Ardent and HMS Acasta, and as a photograph that once hung is now late grandparents' home appeared to be the only photograph of his existence, I felt compelled to send it to the GLARAC Association so they could include it on the website. At last there was a face to his name, and his name appears in the Plymouth Naval Memorial in Devon, as well as the cenotaph on Church Island in Menai Bridge on Anglesey, North Wales. I eventually managed to acquire several medals which now hang on his photograph at my home. Attending the GLARAC events has allowed me to meet some very interesting people, all relatives of the crew members of the 3 ships we like to refer to ourselves as a GLARAC family, and it has also given me the opportunity to pay my respects to my great uncle and all the brave men who were involved in the tragic event of the 8th of June 1940.
Engine Room Artificer Charles Arthur George Baker, HMS Glorious. Assistant Steward Francis Polidano, HMS Glorious. Leading Steward Alfred Gorey Jones, HMS Glorious. Master at Arms John Frederick Woodcock, HMS Glorious. Petty Officer Ernest Crowther, HMS Glorious. Royal Marine Bandsman Frederick John Heath, HMS Glorious. Flight Sergeant George Loudon, 802 Squadron, HMS Glorious. Able Seaman Henry Charles Warner, HMS Glorious. Sub-Lieutenant Henry Dan, HMS Glorious. And Able Seaman Leonard Emery, HMS Acasta. We're grateful for everybody and for their lives, and we appreciate the service they gave to the country.
Yes.
I just want to... Pardon?
Is it okay for me to write?
Absolutely.
Eden Stoker, James Stanley Gates, HMS Ardent. James was born in Liverpool. William was born, he was right by the docks in Liverpool, so I'm sure he wanted to follow his dad, who was already in the Royal Navy, served in the First World War and the Second World War. James was 23 when he died, but just before he got married to Winifred, unfortunately he never seen his son when he was born. John, who can't be here today, he's not very well. John Gates, and he never seen his dad, so that's the sad thing. John was born in November and the ship went down, so he never seen his son. And, that's a sad fact really, isn't it? Unfortunately, my nan, my granddad died in 1942 in the Far East in the Royal Navy. So when my dad went to do his national service in 1950, my nan wouldn't let him go in the Navy. so he had to go in the army. So I think my dad wanted to go in the Navy, but my dad didn't have a good life. So it's just the way it goes, isn't it? He went a different path in the army, but I think he wanted to go in the Navy. He had a good time, my dad, in the army. Spent most of his life, didn't he? So so we're here today, and it's great to see everyone pay the respects to all them brave men.
Thank you, David, and I'm sorry I missed him off.
No, don't.
Right. With all that good stuff you mentioned before, you were sure now that so having mentioned our relatives, I just want to read this poem. Pardon?
George Albert, Store's assistant. He was born in Plymouth and he went down with Glorious.
Right. Thank you. I just want to read this poem now. You can stop croaking. I am part of the deep and beautiful ocean, the waves and the tides, true life in motion. My soul is in the ever-changing seas. I am part of the mist that blows in the breeze. I am the calm. I am part of the storm. I am in the sun's rays, so golden and warm. I am all around you. I am still here. When you feel alone, please know I am near. Love is eternal, a light that's not gone. In the stillness you'll hear me. I'll whisper my song. When you feel the pain, because your heart grieves, please know I am not lost. I am a part of the seas. On all the oceans, white caps float. There are no crosses, row and row. But you who sleep beneath the sea can rest in peace. Your country's free. Say the words of remembrance. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today. David, now I'm going to put the wreath on behalf of GLARAC Association. Thanks, folks. That concludes our ceremony today. Thanks for coming and thanks for your contribution. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vinny.